Joining us now, a very special guest, Mark Linscott, Senior Advisor with the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Mr. Linscott, thanks very much for being with us. Before we get into specifics, the goal is, of course, and that's been declared, to get to a whopping $500 billion by 2030. Now, it's quite clear that at this rate, we aren't going to get there, which is why the question is, if we have a broader agreement on trade and tariffs, a trade agreement, as it were, would we be in a better position to achieve or come close to achieving this big ambition of ours?
Absolutely. And first of all, it's a great pleasure to be with you, Vishnu, and NDTV. Well, first of all, 500 billion is just a number. I mean, 500 billion in bilateral trade has been a goal for many years, going back over several administrations. What I think is more important is the two sides to reach some trade agreements, to integrate their economies more, to open their markets to each other more. Eventually, opening markets like this through a series of trade agreements will get the two countries to the goal of $500 billion. That's inevitable. But they need to establish the terms of that, and I am very hopeful, I'm optimistic that may happen in the next few days.
But what about some of the issues of concern here in New Delhi? For example, greater access in the agricultural sector, concerns over dairy. India needs to protect 80 million smallholder farmers. There are huge sensitivities around dairy. It's just the nature of agriculture and small holdings in the subcontinent and in India which makes farmers and the farming community so sensitive. So the worry, therefore, is that if there are American products which come in, then Indian farmers in the dairy sector tend to lose out, and it is their survival at one level which is at stake. And India is clear that that's a problem. How do we work around that?
Yeah, well, first of all, agriculture is sensitive in all countries. India is not unique. It's always a difficult area to negotiate in trade agreements, and I think this US-India negotiation is no different from that. This is an interim agreement that they are negotiating, and I think they are very close to concluding, if they have not already concluded. You referred earlier to a mini deal or a mega trade agreement. This is something in between. I think it will be more than many. I think it will be quite substantial in terms of cutting tariffs. It may focus on industrial, but it will include some outcomes on agriculture. I don't think it will include dairy. I don't think it will include wheat. I know that there's been a lot of press attention to those two subsectors on agriculture in recent days. Largely, I think those are straw men. I think that the negotiations have set those aside. They will come back on the table at a later stage, but I don't think that's a real issue now. I think there's an accommodation of sensitivities on both sides in an interim agreement.
To what extent do geopolitical factors such as, let's say, countering China's influence shape the trade deal's prospects?
I think they shape them quite a bit. Well, there certainly is a dynamic in which this is the trade agreement that got away during the first Trump administration. As Atul Keshup referred, there was a real effort during the first Trump administration. I was the first negotiator in those efforts on the U.S. side. It was the agreement that got away. So that's a factor. But certainly the geopolitical situation is substantial in terms of impetus for a trade agreement between the United States and India. India is special. It's a market that matters more than almost any other market. India is an ally that has a special place in U.S. strategic policies. So I think that there is a real desire on the part of the U.S. administration to get this done. And, it's a different kind of agreement that's being negotiated compared to nearly every other trading partner, whether it's Korea or Japan or the European Union. This is intended to be a true win-win negotiation and an agreement that will endure, and one that will be built on in a broader mega deal, a bilateral trade agreement.
So I'm just trying to understand why this wouldn't be something very attractive for America. India's offer to reduce tariffs to zero on 60% of American imports and then seek exemptions for, let's say, textiles and pharmaceuticals. India would potentially see that as being a huge bargaining chip, right? 60% of items, zero tariffs for America, but please do give us a few exemptions on, let's say, textiles and pharmaceuticals. But America continuing to insist on reciprocity. How would you look at what India seeks and what America seeks?
Well, again, I think the two sides are there. I think in recent days they've crossed the T's, they've dotted the I's. I'm confident an agreement is imminent. So I think the necessary compromises have been reached. I think what India put on the table impressed the U.S. negotiators. There's been a recognition that this is not the end of the game, that this is only the first bite at the apple. The negotiations will continue. So all of that has definitely mattered, and I think that we'll see much bigger negotiations to come down the road.
Given the evolution of the India-US strategic relationship, and the fact that on so many issues we are completely agreed, whether it's the defense relationship, the transfer of high tech, space, the expanding American presence in the Indian Ocean region, which matches India's strategic requirements. Do you believe that this is something that just has to come along in order for that strategic relationship to get to the next stage?
Or
do you see them as being separate?
Traditionally, they have been separate. Traditionally, they've been on separate tracks. And in many respects, going back several administrations, trade was on the track that was not viewed as important as the strategic side. I do think that they are merging. It's become clear in U.S. trade policy, and I think trade policies of many other countries, including India, that trade is very strategic, that it involves national security interests. So we do see the two tracks coming together, and I think that will be apparent in the interim agreement that is likely to be announced in the next, hopefully, days, and in the negotiations that will follow this interim agreement for a larger bilateral trade agreement.
Mark Linscott, Senior Advisor with the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Great speaking to you. Let's hope that things work out in the interests of more than 1 billion people on both sides of the world. Thank you very much indeed.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Vishnu. It's been a pleasure.